we're back. And we're actually cooking air fryer chicken right now, but we figured we're gonna be making rice, so why not get into it? We're gonna pour 5 cups of rice. 1, right here, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's close it. I figured Maman Farzaneh is pretty much always the one who's making the rice in this household, so she's the star of the show, and I wanted to give her the opportunity to practice her English a little bit and show you guys her magic.
5 cups of rice and 5 tablespoons of salt.
So first things first, she's gonna rinse the rice and drain 5 times. We have 5 cups of rice and we put 3 times the amount, so 15 cups of water to boil. And it's come to a boil now, and my mother-in-law drained the rice and she's gonna pour it into the hot water. Did you guys see how she put the bowl in the water and like swirled it around to get every last bit of grain of rice? I don't know, maybe you guys already know that, but I never knew that until I started seeing my mother-in-law make the rice. I used to like scoop it out with my fingers, and that's way harder. If you just put a little bit of water and swirl it and just keep doing that, so much easier. Just obviously be careful not to grab a part of the bowl that's been in the steam, like boiling hot water, because you know the bowl will get hot. Anyway, we will put the lid on just to help it kind of boil more quickly, and then once it's boiling, we'll remove it and continue to show you the next few steps. Whenever you take off this foam, like you skim it off, it's not like mandatory, but when you do it, your rice will just look better. I'm not sure what the exact translation for shaffaf would be. I had to ask my husband who's behind the camera. Clear, crystal clear. I guess that didn't come to mind because I wouldn't describe rice as crystal clear, but I guess it'll just look better. It won't look slimy? I don't know. I'm trying to think what words to use. So we're gonna skim it off.
Maybe shiny.
Very shiny, yes. We want it to be like shiny and glistening. Expert is here. She picks it, she crushes it, and from the feeling she can tell. I'm gonna guess that if it still feels like kind of like crisp, like it cracks in the center, it's not ready. How did it feel?
No.
It's not ready?
No.
Okay. You want it to smush in your finger and then you take it off. But it is starting to get there because you see how like the rice is starting to float and come to the top. You don't want to stir your rice too much either, because it's just going to make all the starches come out, but just a little bit, you know? Oh, there was something I was going to say, because I never used to, like when I would put the raw rice in the boiling water, I wouldn't put a lid on it. That's something that my mother-in-law does. She'll stand next to it. It'll come to a boil a lot quicker that way. Me, I know that I don't know what you want to call it, my life will just pull me in different directions, and so I'll be somewhere not next to the pot, so if I leave the lid on, it will overflow. So if you're like that, what I do is usually put like a wooden... It's ready, okay. I put a wooden spoon on it. They say that helps keep it from overflowing. If it's really going overboard, it won't help. You'll be able to catch it in enough time. Okay, so let's put the strainer in the sink and drain this. Hast اونجا؟ say why I just poured some cold water before draining it. When you pour cold water on the rice, it will kind of elongate. The rice will elongate. I know some people will drop like a few ice cubes in it, and everybody has a different way of doing it. I did it this way because that is what my mother-in-law asked me to do, to just pour some cold water in the pot before draining it. Let's talk tahdig and toppings. There are so many variations of tahdig that you can do. If you have thin bread like lavash bread, or if you have like thin pita bread, you can use that. You can make tahdig with potatoes. We can always do that in a future video. We're gonna use our good old avocado oil. You don't need too much, but you definitely want enough to cover the bottom. Yeah, every time we could teach you something new. But so yeah, yogurt is another one. That's my favorite one. My mother-in-law makes. She will mix oil, yogurt, and saffron, and it's called tahchin. And I think technically in tahchin you will crack an egg as well, but we don't really like the egginess, so we don't use eggs, but you could. We cook all the time. Every day we're cooking, so just whatever day of the week ends up being, maybe we will record a tahchin version of the tahdig, and maybe one day we'll record the potato version. We love putting potatoes at the bottom of lubia polo, so whenever we make lubia polo, you'll probably see us making potato tahdig. All right. Toppings, before we move on to the tahdig, let me say the toppings really quick. With plain white rice, you can just have plain white rice. You can have white rice with saffron and a couple of topping options. We call these Zereshk. In English, I'm pretty sure it's called barberry, Barberry. This is 1/3 of a cup, and I have it soaking, and before we kind of saute it, we'll drain it. And this is a tablespoon of almonds and a tablespoon of pistachios. I'll try to leave links to places where you can find this online in case you don't have an international grocer nearby. Okay, tahdig time. I used to be really sensitive about water dripping as I was putting the rice in my pot. I would use a spatula so that I would drain even more water. It wasn't until I started making rice with my mother-in-law that I realized it will become even more fluffy whenever you just dump it all in there. It's okay if some of the water from the strainer drips in there because it's just gonna help make it fluffy. My mom and my grandmother, I grew up seeing them poke holes in their rice and going like this. I never really understood why. My dad told me later that it helps the rice just cook quicker. And I just asked my mother-in-law and she said the same thing. We're gonna turn on the heat pretty high to get it hot. When you're making Persian rice and you're making tahdig, you have to use a nonstick pot. But I was going to mention that this lid does not have a vent anywhere. So we're going to need to put, we call it a damkhoni. Basically, you can use 2 layers of paper towels, or you can use a really thin cheesecloth. If you don't have either of those, you can use a regular dish towel too.
This catches the steam.
So I think she said it perfectly well. This catches the steam, and I guess just to take it a step further, if there was a hole and the steam was allowed to vent out, that's one way, or you put this to absorb it. Otherwise, the steam would just keep collecting the condensation on the lid and dripping into the rice, and that's going to make it not the texture you want. So it's still on high because we're waiting for the steam to build up in there, and there's 2 ways that you can tell. The easy way, I guess, you would just kind of slightly peek in and see if there's steam circulating in there. And another way, if you're brave, is lick your finger and go like that, and if it sizzles, it won't hurt, I promise. You know it's ready. And when I did that, I could hear it, I felt it, and I can lower it now. Yes, baby. And we're not gonna put it super low. We still want it to be, I would say it's medium low, yeah, because we want it to continue to create steam. If you put it too low, it's just gonna stop steaming. میخوای پسته بخوری؟ الان میام برات پوست میکنم. صبر کن. Okay. So we lowered the heat on here, and my mother-in-law put 3 tablespoons of ghee in a small little pot, and we're gonna heat it up. You want it to be really low, right? Is that right? No? Oh, okay. I don't know. I usually just dump my ghee on the rice. So this is really like the correct way to do it. With ghee, I just know that the reason why she heats it up is because it becomes like glistening and oily and contributes to that shafof, like that glistening of the rice. And we have it on high because we're just waiting for it to melt, right? And then we're gonna take it off the heat. Because if it overheats, it'll smell bad. It'll kind of like burn, like have a weird smell. And the reason why we use ghee as opposed to just any regular oil on our rice is because ghee has a really good aroma and a really good flavor. But if you don't have access to ghee, you can use butter. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, butter will taste good too. Okay, shit. Looky. You see before, you see how it's kind of like gritty, but now that it's heated up, it's clear. Moving on to the toppings. Drained and rinsed. We're using ghee for our zereshk. So zereshk is a very, very small little berry. You don't want to keep it on the heat for too long because it'll burn. And it's also sour. And some people like it straight up sour, but most people, when serving it and putting it on rice, will add a little bit of sugar just to bring out the flavor. The same way that salt will bring out sweetness, a little bit of sweetness will bring out the flavor of the saltiness, of sourness. For this 1/3 cup of barberries, we added a tablespoon of sugar. This is 1/4 teaspoon of ground saffron, and we're adding just about 2 to 3 tablespoons of hot water, boiling hot water. This is what I meant by some people brew their saffron. I mean, brew is the wrong word. The right word is steep. Steeping your saffron like you would steep tea. There's different ways to do it. You could put hot water on it, or you could, if you do it in advance, you could put an ice cube on it and just wait for the ice cube to melt. And what else is important to know? I know that saffron's not easy to get your hands on. If you happen to have a friend who visits Iran, then you're lucky and they'll probably bring you back some saffron. If not, I know that specialty food stores have them. I've never personally got saffron from a specialty food store, so I don't know of the quality. Saffron is basically like the cherry on top when it comes to Persian cooking. Let's take a look at our rice. Ooh, love that sound. I love that smell. In Iran, whenever you're walking around, whether it's like in alleys or in an apartment building, when it's lunchtime, you can smell rice. It's just the most comforting smell ever. My mother-in-law is pouring some of the rice in a separate bowl. She's going to add the saffron. And toppings. Little man. What's he doing over there? Tahdig. Hey yo. How you doing? How you doing?
Very, very good.
اوکی بیبی بیا بغلم.